Hey everybody, welcome back to Ink and Effort, the podcast where we turn your writing dreams into a productive reality one page at a time. I'm your host, James Fox, and I don't know about you guys, but last week was crazy. I was so excited to talk with Mark Stallings about his process and all of the cool tools that he uses. I mean, I spent this whole week in between recordings playing with some of the tools that he talked about and actually bugging him offline a little bit more about some of the unique AI tools that he's using. I mean, the man's got a process, and it's pretty impressive. I mean, if you haven't checked out that podcast episode from last week about tools and technology that you should be using as an author, you should check it out because I think that it's the future. I mean, just with ChatGPT this week, I probably saved myself 10, 12 hours of research. Um, yeah, like even with fact checking it, even with doing the math on my own just to make sure that it was right because I was nervous about it, right? People say it just makes stuff up, and it does. But even with that, I was able to save myself so much time. It was ridiculous. So, I think that if you're not using these tools, you probably should be. I'm not telling you to write your book with AI, right? Like, I'm not telling you to jump up on ChatGPT and say, write my novel for me. Because it frankly can't. I mean, I'm just going to be real with you. It can't do that yet. Can it eventually in the future? Sure. Why not? But it shouldn't matter because you have a story to tell. And use whatever tool possible. Like I said last week, I doubt we're all writing on typewriters right now. Like we're using Google, we're using Microsoft Word or Scrivener or whatever. Like, we're using modern tools. Like, this is just a new modern tool. It's nothing to be scared of. Yes, it can be used for evil, but so can everything. All right, so this week we are talking about staying motivated and inspired, and I think more than anything else, this is probably one of the most pivotal episodes we'll do because we've talked about writing routine, we've talked about tools, we've talked about environment, we talked about all of the things that you need around you, your support system, your structure, your writing community. We've talked about those things. But what we have not talked about is this, right? You. What does it take to keep you going? You can build yourself build yourself a great office. You can surround yourself with wonderful people. You can have all the checks and balances that you need to get the job done, all the latest bells and whistles and tools. But if you don't sit your butt in a chair and write, then you just have a lot of really cool stuff around you and you're not doing anything. So, the guest that we have this week, I'm thrilled to have on. She's hard to catch. She's a busy lady. So I'm really, really excited that it came together the way that it did, and we get to talk with her because I don't know anybody more motivated and busier than this author. She, not only is she doing the day job grind too, but and having a social life and doing all of the really cool things, but she's also like. She's a lot like me, only better in that she works on a lot of different things all at once, like across a lot of genres, and like lifts them all up kind of at the same time, and she's just a great person. So I think that if you can work as hard as she does and be as good of a person as she is, she's got the recipe. We just need to learn from her. So I'm really, really thrilled to invite Margaret Beeler to the show. Maggie, how's it going?
Pretty good. How about you?
Hanging in there. So I'm really excited to have you on this episode because I don't know anybody quite as motivated as you are. Uh, I,
Thank you for the compliment.
I see you on all the social media stuff all the time, and you're always up to stuff. You're always like doing really, really cool things. You're doing new things. I mean, I want to talk about some of the like interesting and cool projects that you've done, and I have to imagine that doing such a wide variety of things helps keeps you motivated, right?
Yeah, it definitely keeps me motivated and keeps me very busy.
So so
Keeps me on my toes.
yeah, for sure. I mean, you're so busy, you keep me on my toes.
Oh
So
my God.
so
I'm glad.
yeah, so let's talk about motivation and being not just an author but any creative. it tends to be a challenge. I feel. I mean, I don't.
Yeah.
Um, let's talk about like the ebbs and flows of being in a creative space. What is that like for you?
For me, I go through lots of waves of motivation and lack of motivation. I tend to be more motivated to do creative projects in the winter because I have a lot more downtime then, and there's not as much to do outside. So in the summer, I find myself, kind of being pulled in a bunch of different directions, whether it's like going to events outside or going to sporting games or doing social things with friends. So it's hard to find the balance between working on writing stuff and also keeping a social life and making sure that I'm doing things that are outside of writing because it's important to have a life outside of writing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm kind of rambling, but I struggle with it a little bit in the summer, find it picking up a lot more in the winter, but right now I'm actually in a big creative mood to write. So it's all like you said, it's ebbs and flows. It comes and it goes, but it's always at the back of my mind is like, oh my gosh, I have all these projects I need to be working on, once I have 6 books out now, so there's always something to be doing. And that's kind of like motivating in a way. But yeah, so rambling. I'm a rambler, so it's probably going to happen more than once.
Me too. That's another reason I'm excited to have you on today is because I can just start talking and not stop.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that pressure because I think that's one of the things I personally struggle with the most is
Yeah.
I'm simultaneously lifting 4 books in different
Hmm.
genres all at once, all at the same time,
Right.
writing on all of them every single day, and the pressure that I feel is simultaneously motivating and demotivating. Like it's the weirdest
Yep.
thing because like some days I use it and some days it just crushes me.
Hmm.
How do you handle that pressure?
I feel that a lot too because I have 3 kind of different like series or like genres that I work on. I have obviously my main series, which is the young adult fantasy series, which I published the first back in 2021. So that is like a lot of pressure to get the second book out there, and pressure can be motivating and also, like you said, demotivating at the same time because it's like, oh my God, like I have to do this thing, but I don't want to force the thing because if you force the thing, then like sometimes you can almost like demotivate yourself. Like if you're putting so much pressure on yourself, it's hard to find that creative energy. So what I do is I kind of just allow myself the space and the time to have the creative energy come back to me. But then with having like multiple different projects, it's like, okay, if I'm not feeling motivated on this one specific thing, I can jump to another project where I am feeling motivated and work on that. So that's kind of like how I manage the ebbs and flows of the motivation is if one dips, then I like jump into another. But then if that dips, then I jump into another. But then it also like that leads into like a bit of a longer creative process because I'm kind of jumping between things. But it's worked for me thus far. And yeah, that's what I do for that.
That's kind of what I do too. Like if I'm not feeling particularly sci-fi today, I'll jump into my supernatural thriller, or if I'm not
Yeah.
feeling that, I'll jump into my romance or whatever. You know, like I kind of bounce all over the place. I do a lot of ghostwriting too, which
Oh, okay.
is kind of its own weird monster because it has a hard deadline. There's people checking in on you. Like it feels more
Mhm.
business than it does creative. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that kind of helps keep me motivated for the creative stuff a little bit.
Yeah. Really.
What do you use for inspiration? I feel like so much of what we do is based off of inspiration. So
Yeah.
what do you use to inspire yourself for your writing?
I actually use the other independent authors in my network as inspiration because it's like, you see other people doing these things and it's like, well, if they're doing it, I can do it too. So a lot of the times when I'm feeling demotivated in writing, I really like lean on my other writer friends. Like I'll pick up their books and start reading their books and be like, well, they did this. If they can do that, I can do this. So I kind of like I'll just start reading their stuff and that motivates me a lot because, the limits are boundless in terms of like what you can and cannot do. So if someone's doing it, you can do it too. So I do. I just like pick up other books and start reading them. And that motivates me.
Do you read in your own genre? Do you read in every genre? Like, what do you read when you're looking for inspiration?
So for pleasure, I read primarily thrillers, but when I'm looking for motivation, I'll pick up another like indie fantasy book and start reading that.
Okay.
So yeah, if it's fantasy, if I'm writing in fantasy, I'll read fantasy for motivation and specifically like independent books by like people I know. Cause that just, I don't know, it's just so inspiring to like pick up something that someone you know has like done, or like I'll like beta read my fantasy writer friends stuff and that motivates me
Yeah.
to keep going, or I'll like ask people to read my stuff and offer suggestions and comments and stuff, and that's pretty motivating for me,
Yeah,
just like being on your network, I guess.
yeah. I mean, that's one of the things we've talked about is building a writers community, like, like having people support and different ways that that helps. And no, I don't think anybody's talked about like reading their writing group friends as like inspiration, and that's true. I do the same thing. Um, I have a tendency to not want to read in the genre that I'm writing because I feel like it influences the voice of the,
Yeah.
so it, like if I look for something completely outside, and that usually like inspires me for something else down the road. I'm like, oh, well,
Yeah. I
supernatural.
almost feel like when I'm reading that stuff though, I'm not really reading it for pleasure. I'm like purely reading it for like motivation. So like I don't think I like pick up any of their stuff per se. I feel like I'll literally read like a chapter and be like, "Oh, I'm motivated." I don't know, it's so weird. Or
Yes.
I'll like watch like TV shows that are similar to my book and that kind of like motivates me. Like I watch a lot of like children like cartoonish type stuff. Like but that like motivates me weirdly. Like I'll watch like The Owl House is a pretty like comparable TV show to the stuff that I write. So I'll like watch a couple episodes of that and be like, I don't know, just inspired. Like stuff similar to it.
Yeah, it's that whole idea. It's almost like FOMO, right? It's that fear of missing out. Like, people are, that people are watching Owl House, and then you're like, well, I need to get my story finished because if people like this, they're gonna like
Stuff like
mine.
that.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah. So, what about personal experience? What about how does that play into your writing and keeping yourself motivated? Like, um, just and talking more about like inspiration versus motivation, right? Like, do you, what do they call that, mining, right? Mining your real life for data to put into your characters and your stories. Do you do that?
I do. I find inspiration mostly from like places that I'm at. Like I'll go to, I don't know, for example, like there's this conservatory in Cincinnati called the Crone Conservatory, and sometimes I go there and just like walking through there, I find like the environment is very like inspiring or conducive to creativity because it's a bunch of different like different flora from around the area. And I don't know, I see some like wacky plants there, and then I'm like, okay, this could be like a cool like I don't know. Like if I need like a medicine in my book, I'll like take inspiration from like that type of stuff or like names, like character names. I'll like there's like some weird names for plants there and I'll just like kind of like spin off of those for character names and stuff. So I do find like inspiration like doing stuff like that or like traveling. Like I'll travel to like a cool place and be like, "Oh, this would be a really cool inspiration for a setting in my book." So that's kind of like inspiration. And then obviously like I'll come up with like character like if I meet a really cool person, like I met this one girl one time and she had just like the coolest personality and I was like I need a character like this. And then I'll like write a character like kind of like based on that personality and it's just yeah, I do draw from real life sometimes. I don't really think about it as much. Now that I'm like talking about it, I'm like I do draw a lot of inspiration from like stuff around me subconsciously. So, yeah.
I think we all do, but I think the ability to like recognize and like put it into actual practice instead of just like relying on your subconscious to like weave the stories together for you.
Yeah.
I think that was a turning point for me in my screenwriting where, when I was trying to come up with characters, I was like, okay, well, I want them to look like this guy, I want them to act like this guy, and I want a little sprinkle of this girl in there too, and you know
Yeah.
um And I actually would name my characters after the people that I was in my first draft, right? Like, it was like, if this is this person, if Mike is going to be this guy, his name's Mike,
Yeah.
so I can keep track of who he is until I developed the voice, and then I'd go through and change the names into cooler, usually sci-fi
Yeah,
names.
I actually do that too. I'm like kind of like writing this rom-com right now, just on the side. Like I said, like I'll pick it up when I'm like not feeling motivation to write the fantasy. And it's weird because the antagonist, I mean, he's never gonna hear this because I don't even know where this guy is now. But like I got inspiration from the for the antagonist in the rom-com from like a kid that was in like a junior like soccer league I did when I was like 12, and I literally named him like the same exact name as that kid. His name was Noah, and he's never gonna see this, but like I don't know how I like drew that from that, but like from when I was like 12, there was this kid in that league who just antagonized me the whole time.
Yeah.
And I just like drew his entire like personality into this antagonist, and it just fits so well. And I'm like, even from like that long in the past, like I'm still drawing inspiration from like people around me.
Yeah.
So a word of the wise to people around writers, you might be put in a story at some point. I don't know.
You are probably in a book somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
You are probably in a book somewhere. So make sure you're on your best behavior around us.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So let's talk about some techniques that we use as writers to maintain our motivation, right? People talk about like planning and like community and writers groups.
Mhm.
What works for you? Like what techniques do you use to just kind of to establish that routine that keeps you
Yeah.
routinely motivated?
I have like two different things that I do that work pretty well for me. One of which is I'm a part of a weekly writers group. I meet with them every Thursday, and we read like 1,000 words from our work in progress. So that kind of like keeps me on my toes. I'm like, at least once a week, I'll have to produce 1,000 words so I can share it with them, and I get good critiques from them, and it's very motivating. And then another thing is like I do kind of like I guess like on that line, like routine is really important for me. Like when I'm getting into the writing mood, I have like very specific like items that I like to have around me when I'm writing that kind of like get me in the mood. And I've heard a lot of writers that do the same sort of thing. Like they have the same like setup. Like, like they light the same candle, they make the same tea, they put on the same like background music, and they sit in the same spot. And that's kind of like what I do. Like once I do those things, I'm like, all right, like I'm in the writing zone. This is like motivating me to write. Like I have this special tea. It's from this local coffee shop in Cincinnati, and it's like a strawberry mango green tea, and I
Ooh.
drink that every time I write, and it just like I don't know, like these certain like weird things kind of like motivate me. It's like I'm only drinking this tea when I'm writing. So if I want to drink this tea, I must sit down and write. So I have to be motivated to write if I want to drink this tea. I don't know. They're like weird things.
Well,
And
it's
everyone I feel like has their own weird like, setup thing.
it's like Pavlov's dogs, right? It's classical conditioning. You if you're only
Hmm.
drinking the tea when you're writing and you want the tea, then you have to write. Like
Hmm.
it's I should do that with like sugar. Like
Yeah,
like I can't eat the
literally.
cake unless I'm writing.
Exactly. Yeah. You have to kind of like trick yourself into getting in that like mindset. And I feel like that is the case with writing because when like for me, I'm not a full-time writer, but I want to be a full-time writer. So you have to write every day. You have to get into the zone. And it's kind of like, oh my gosh, I'm going on so many tangents. It's kind of like a habit. Like you have to do it for a certain amount of times every day. I think it's like was it like 90 days you have to do the thing every day at the same time to build a habit. And, it's just kind of like sticking to that, even though it's hard because writing can become like, some days you just sit there and stare at a screen and be like, oh my God, I don't even know how to like write. Like I
Yeah.
forget how to like write the scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that that's a good point. Like you really are creating a habit, and I think that the rewards are important. I mean,
Hmm.
for you, it sounds like your reward is like tea or some of
Yes.
these other things, right? That you like.
I'm very tea motivated. I have some here,
Nice.
always.
Yes, I have mine as well. So, uh,
Yes, it's always there.
I mean, mine's just Earl Grey, so it's nothing special, but I like it. So,
Oh, mine is not the specialty right now because it's
oh,
not writing time. It's
right, yeah,
actually a chai. It's a chai tea, not the special strawberry mango tea.
yeah. So, I think one of the rewards that I really like to give myself are like small victories. You know, like
Yeah.
I finished the chapter, I finished the scene,
Yes.
I killed the character that I've been looking forward to killing.
Oh
You know,
no.
you know, it's like the small victories. I think too many people put the onus on like I finished the book, and that's a great victory. I mean, you should like be running around your house or your office
Yeah.
or wherever
Campaign download
screaming. Yeah.
them. Yeah.
So, but I think that celebrating the small victories helps too. Is that something that you
Yes.
practice?
Yes, I do that very often. Even if it's just like, for example, last night um I really wanted to watch this. I'm like obsessed with reality TV show, okay? So don't judge me. I really wanted to watch the new episodes of Love is Blind, and I was like, it's so easy to just be like, okay, well, I'm just gonna watch the TV show and then I'll write at some point, and the some point never happens, obviously. So I like forced myself to sit down. I was like, okay, if you write 500 words, you can watch your stupid episode of your TV show. And then I sat down and wrote like 1,000 words. So it's like,
So, did you watch two?
no, I just watched one. It ended up being like 11 o'clock, and I was like, okay, I need to just like go to bed at this point. But yeah, like that. It's like I have to complete this task before I can do the thing that I actually really want to do more. And I honestly find that it motivates me to write a lot faster. Like I got those 1,000 words done in like an hour just because I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this really quick because I really want to like write. I really want to watch the show. So small rewards do work pretty well. I used to reward myself with boba tea
Nice.
quite often. But yeah, I do a lot of small rewards, and that's quite motivating.
Yeah, I think when I was first starting out, I did a lot more small rewards. Now, I think I've established enough a routine that I can just like sit down, do the thing, and it's
Yeah.
like, I also love reality TV. I watch Alone, which there's a new season going on right now, and
Yeah.
I do the same thing where it's like if I don't hit my writing goals for the week, I don't get to watch my episode. Um,
Yeah.
so that's really fun. Let's talk about the one of the hard things. One of the things I really like to talk about in this show is burnout and how to avoid burnout. And
Yeah.
I think that motivation, because there are times where I get so motivated that I get obsessive and I
Yes.
will just write for 20 hours straight.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. So how do you avoid that burnout? Like should you lean into that 20 hours and just do it and get the words down, and if you don't write for 10 days afterwards because you're recovering, that's okay?
I think that's okay. I mean, I think it's all about giving yourself grace, and like understanding, that we're human and we're not meant to be like workaholics. So like if I feel like, because like for me, I don't want to force the creative process because if I'm not in the mood to write, I don't want to write like sloppy stuff or stuff that my heart isn't in. So like, and especially being like a 20-some-year-old person, it's like, I don't want to force this if it's not there because, there's a lot going on in life and it's okay to take breaks and like do other fun things in life that aren't writing and just, you know that it's always at the back of your mind. Like for me, I had the past couple months I didn't write at all because I got laid off my job and I was like, stressed with that kind of stuff and I didn't feel the need to like force myself to create when I just wasn't in the mental space to create because I knew if I forced myself to write, I would be just like, dreading it. And that almost leads to like a deeper form of burnout, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I do I mean, maybe that's not the best method if you're, trying to go full time, but I also don't think that you should be forcing yourself to create if you just can't. So, but I think it's okay. I think it's good to write like at least if you can make yourself at least write like at least 200 words a day. I try and do that because it's never going to be just 200 words. It's always going to be more, but like I'm always like an advocate of setting the bar low and then feeling achieved and then like going further. Whereas like if I set the bar high and I'm already not in like the zone to create, then I'm just going to get frustrated with myself for not meeting that goal. And then maybe I will burn out faster because I'm like, well, I'm not even achieving my goals. Like, and this is frustrating. And that kind of, I don't know, I'm rambling, but like, yeah, I think the way to avoid burnout is to just have like grace and understand that we're human and, you know, we can't be working 24/7. We need breaks,
Yeah.
and brain breaks are really important too.
Yeah, and I think you touched on a couple things that I think are important, like staying available to like be inspired, right? You're talking about going out to the conservatory and like looking at plants and getting inspired and
Hmm.
meeting people and developing characters. I think that you've got that like inspiration bank, right? Like if you're just locked in, if I lock myself in my office and I never leave, and I mean, I've got 45 years of experience to draw upon, but eventually I'm
Yeah.
going to run out, right? Eventually I'm gonna not feel inspired anymore, and you being connected to the world and allowing yourself that grace to go out and just have fun and experience things is going to build that inspiration bank.
Yeah.
You gotta view it as you're doing writing research. You're not just
Yes.
watching a 49ers preseason football game or
Yeah.
whatever. You're giving yourself the you're allowing yourself to build up your inspiration bank. Uh,
Right. Because even in those 2 months where I wasn't writing, I was still like, you know, doing other things. Like I say not write when I say not writing, I mean not working on my like fantasy series, which is like my biggest thing and I must finish it. But I was still doing other things. Like I created a coloring book. I, ordered the copies of my cocktail book. I did all these I was doing other things that are also contributing to the author career. So it's like if I'm not writing, I'm at least doing like something that's contributing to the furthering of my author career. So it's not like I'm just entirely putting that stuff aside for 2 months, but I'm like pivoting to another part of writing that is like less conducive to me burning out than like forcing myself to produce when I just like am not in the mental space to do it because the past few months have been a lot.
right, right, yeah.
So it's just finding things that you can do to further your author career when like, find a different path. If one door is blocked, go to the next door and then maybe you can come back and open that door later when you find the key or whatever,
Right.
I don't
Right,
know.
right, and I think that brings me to kind of like the last thing I'd like to talk about is as authors we kind of have a purpose. There's a burning story inside of us. Yeah, it's maybe a singular story or it's maybe
Yeah.
multiple stories, but there's something burning in us that wants out, and I
Yes.
and I think that staying like tuned in or clocked in to that purpose helps avoid burnout because
Hmm.
you got to be kind of crazy to want to be an author. I mean, it's a hard
Yeah.
life. It's
It really is.
it's really it's you got to be a little bit wacky to want to do this as your job. Um, I think the reason why we do it is because of that purpose, right? It's such a
Yeah.
passion inside of us that it doesn't matter how crazy it is, how painful it
Mhm.
is, we're gonna keep doing it. Um,
Yeah. It's
so
rewarding.
yeah, so I think that finding that passion, and really staying like not just like staying locked in, but like finding out what your purpose is and
Hmm.
like really like putting words to it. Like my purpose as an author is this, um,
Yeah.
and then making sure that you're doing something every day that pushes that forward, just like
Yes,
you're doing, right? Like, you know,
exactly.
I think that is something that really kind of helps keep you motivated. Um,
For sure.
what do you think about your I mean, you don't have to share what your writing purpose is. A lot of times they're very personal, but how do you think that your purpose as an author, like your grand purpose as an author, keeps you motivated, and how do you stay tuned into that?
Yeah, so I started writing my first book, the one that I actually went on to publish a couple years ago, Sacred, when I was 12. And at the time, I was dealing with a lot of like social anxiety, which if you know me now, it's like, what the hell? What do you mean you deal with social anxiety? Like, there's no way, girl. But like, yeah, I dealt with a lot of like social anxiety when I was growing up, and social like awkwardness, which I've obviously like overcome now. But like that was like what drove me to really like want to publish my debut novel because I was like, wow, this is like some crazy stuff I dealt with and I overcame it. And it's really important for me to share this story with the world because, maybe someone will, not that it's like a very prevalent theme in my book, but the main character does deal with a lot of like social anxiety and social awkwardness. So it's really important for me to get that story out there because someone else might read it and then relate to the character and be like, well, this character overcame their struggles. I can do it too, even though I'm not stumbling down a portal into a fantasy world, but I'm, like, I don't know. I think that's like my passion just because it's so like close to something that I dealt with growing up. So it's like really important for me to just see this through, at least for, 12-year-old Maggie. So that's why I write for 12-year-old Maggie.
Well, having read Sacred and relate to the character, and because I was a little bit socially awkward as a kid too.
Yeah.
But I was a weird extrovert that was also socially awkward. So
Yeah, me too. It's weird.
it's a
Like
it's a unique struggle.
it is a really unique struggle. It's like, okay, I'm outgoing, but like really awkward and don't know how to like really be a normal human in conversation. So it's hard. I don't know. But now it's like, I don't know. It's just important to share that stuff.
Yeah, see, I don't think I ever
Yeah.
overcame it. I just kind of embraced it and said, you know what,
Yeah, literally.
I'm just, I'm just gonna be the obnoxious dork. That's who I'm gonna be. I'm gonna own it.
Well,
Um,
those are the coolest kinds of people. It's like if you can be, you can grow to be confident in who you are, which is what the arc of the story
yep.
is be confident. That's what the theme of all of my books are, is like growing to be confident in who you are, because that's what I did. So I think that's why it's so important for me to share those stories, is because I don't know, writing it is weirdly like personal to your experiences. So it is very motivating to share that because it's almost like a way of like, you know, of communicating yourself to the people around you. So it's like, hey, I got to get these stories out there because I got to share what's going on in here with other people the way that I know how to share it. I don't
Right.
know, that
Well,
kind
and
of
the
stuff.
and the way that people will accept it, right? I mean, as a society, we have a hard time just sitting down and having the heart to hearts, right?
Right,
The deep talks.
exactly.
But you read a book and you're like, oh wow, I find that character so sympathetic, and I relate to that character so much, and you're like, but you're
Yeah.
relating to me.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, that character is actually me. So
Yep.
you understand.
Yeah, it's really hard when people are like, "Oh, that character's such a dick," and you're like, "Oh man, that's I wrote that character after myself. Damn
Yeah, literally.
it." um,
But then when they say that about the character that you modeled after your like, arch nemesis growing up, you're like, yes,
yes, he actually
we
was a dick. Yeah, yeah,
understand.
yeah. So Maggie, tell us all where we can find you, what you're working on right now that you're excited about, and just any
Yeah.
other closing thoughts you have about motivation and inspiration.
Sure. So I guess readers can find me. It's pretty basic. MargaretCBeeler.com is my website. That's where all my books are. What I'm working right now that I'm really excited about is the second book of my series, Sacred, which has been a long time in the coming because, I don't know, life
Life.
is
Yep.
wild. College, job, moving, like, all that stuff. Anyway, they're not excuses, but it's things that happen. I'm also working on, well, it's completely finished, but I just ordered the 400 copies of my literary trope cocktail book for bookworms. Very excited about that to
Me
arrive.
too. My God, I can't wait.
I'm so excited. And yeah, just like final closing thoughts on motivation is just like, no one's gonna write the story other than you. So that should be motivation enough. If you don't do it, no one's gonna do it. So you might as well get in that chair and start writing, even you know, if you need to take a break, that's cool. But you gotta just keep your eye on the prize and keep working towards it, even if it's like 100 words a day, which sometimes it's that way for me because things just get busy, or if it's doing back work, like designing your cover or all that stuff, like take small steps towards the goal and it all adds up in the end. No matter if it takes you like 2 months or 3 years, it's still going to be important to get out to the world. So just keep working at it, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Right on. All right. Well, I know you're getting ready to travel, so travel safely and
Thank you. Yes.
enjoy
Bears and Bengals. Let's go.
enjoy the preseason game. I'm jealous.
Thank
And
you.
thanks for jumping on.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. I'll see you soon. So that's exactly what I'm talking about, right? I mean, we have this conversation all the time, and we talked about burnout a lot. We've talked about motivation a lot. We've talked about routine a lot. Routine's very important, but it's the passion behind all of those things that I think really drives and really motivates us to write. Uh, like Maggie said, like we were talking about, we've got to be kind of crazy to do this, right? Like it's a hard gig. You're really kind of like exposing yourself, like I mean, emotionally exposing yourself, like you're really sharing a lot of who you are as a person, and some of like the deep meaningful things that have happened to you, and changed you as a person, or let you grown as a person. I mean, I can tell you in the Soul Saga there are very deeply personal things written in there. I mean, I think my motivation as an author is to inspire people to like really look around them, like really get to know people, really get to see what's happening, look to the root of what's going on. Don't just look at the surface, look at the motivation. Why did somebody do what they did? What they did might be terrible, but why did they do it? The why they did it always matters more to me than the what they did, because that tells me what kind of person they are. That tells me what they're going to do in the future, right? If I know they can do something bad because of something good in them, then I know that like that's going to be a struggle for interacting with them, because there's going to be some trust issues there, right? So that's my whole motivation to writing the books that I write, is look beyond the surface, look beyond just what you see or what you hear, and try to get to know each other. But I mean, that's when people don't get it, or people don't like it, it winds up hurting, because it's like, this is something that's very meaningful and very important to me. And then when people don't get it or whatever, it's hard. So being an author is hard. It's a difficult thing. Being an artist is hard, because I mean, all types of art, you're putting yourself out there. You're putting your emotions out there. It's not just something, you're just not sitting down and just creating a thing like, okay, I'm going to sell it and whatever. Even people who write to market specifically, I think are still sharing a part of themselves that whether they realize it or not, they're putting themselves into the books. They're putting their friends, their family, their experiences into the books, their wants, their desires. So, I think that what you're doing with staying motivated and staying inspired is you're collecting more things, you're creating the routines, and then you're doing the work, and it's your purpose. It's going to keep you motivated, because if you look at just the business or the practice of being an author, you're going to say, wow, this is really hard. This is really tough. I don't know if I like this. And I've done this several times where I've looked at this and been like, I don't know if I can handle this. But I go back to it every time because of the passion, and because of that deep rooted sense of, I have a story to tell and I need to tell it. I want to change the world. I want to try to make the world a better place. Every single story that I interact with, whether it's in film, television, novels, magazines, face-to-face, I am trying desperately to try to make the world better. I think that media has a very unique and powerful place in influencing change in the world. That can be change for the better, that can be change for the worse. And I'm trying to be on the side of making it better. So, if I can't connect that to every single thing that I'm working on, every single word that I'm writing, every single page that gets produced, then I burn out. I stop feeling the desire to do it, because I'm now just making something to make money, right? Money's important. I mean, this is a career. We're talking about being an author as a job, a full-time writer, and you need to be able to support yourself and support that dream. I'm not saying just write for passion and not write for money. But what I am saying is that if you should do both, right? Like, you should align your writing for money with writing for your passion, because that way you avoid burning out. That's what I do, and I think that that's one of the reasons why I can sustain the word counts I can daily. That's why I can lift 4 books simultaneously, is because each one of those, every word I write is aligning with my passion and my main motivator as an author. So just like characters in your books, you got to make sure that you are motivating them, right? You've got to make sure that you are properly motivating their decisions, and you've got to do that too. If you're feeling like you're struggling, if you're not being able to sit down in the chair, put your hands on the keys and get words down, you got to look at your motivation. What are you writing? it is why you want to be a writer in alignment with what you're currently writing. If you're really struggling, like if you've gone months without being able to write, if you can't just seem to get the gumption to sit down in a chair and start pounding out keys, or when you do, it's just not flowing, I would almost guarantee you that you're probably out of alignment with your motivation and your purpose as an author. So take a good hard look at that. Do a little bit of soul searching. Make sure that you're motivated as a character in your own story to do the things that you need to do. Because when you lack motivation, then it's just unwarranted action, right? It's action without purpose. And I think the purpose is one of the most important parts of being an author or any kind of creative. Right? All right. We're doing good stuff, and I'm excited that you have watched, and I hope that you take what Maggie has said and you apply it to all the different tools that we've come up with and we've talked about over the last couple weeks, and you sit down and do some writing, right? So, like always, keep writing, keep pushing, and remember, it's the ink and the effort that brings stories to life. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and follow us on social media platforms for more tips and inspiration. See you next time.